Hi, I'm Megan.
I'm Abby.
We are discussing our experiences filling out the IAT tests and the Johnson readings. So first of all, which test did you take?
I took the, let's see, I wrote it down. The race relation ones between African Americans and European Americans, and the sexuality one, and the weight one, and the age one.
Okay.
Those are the four that I took.
I took the race one for African American and European Americans too, so maybe we can talk about that since we both took that one.
Okay, cool.
Taking out, my process of taking the test, I feel like was really weird because I didn't know how, I found myself being really stressed out with making sure I was doing left to right, yeah, and it was really stressful for me.
Yeah.
But I think when I got the results, I was also really surprised because
what did you get?
It said that I was basically moderately racist,
Okay.
towards having a preference towards. This is Butters the cat.
Yeah, he's
definitely going to be a part of our video. I don't know. It said so I had a moderate preference to European Americans.
Yeah.
And at first I was kind of upset about it. I remember saying everything that I'm going to say right now, basically, in our discussion from last week. But at first I was really angry. I was like, I'm not racist. I don't ever view myself as a racist person, especially with black people, because I've never met a black person that wasn't overly friendly to me and really awesome. And so I wouldn't have no reason to just be like, oh, I met a black person before in my life that was awful, so I'm going to generalize that all black people are awful. Mm-hmm. So that was my initial thought. But then as I was thinking about it more, about the potential reasons for why I would show moderate preference to European Americans, I think it makes sense because I was born in North Dakota. There are, just demographically, there's 3% African American people there. So, I was born there, and I spent half my year there, and the other half of the year I would spend in Colorado, which was also not a lot of black people. Yeah. So, I just don't know if that has something to do with it. Just I literally wasn't exposed to any sort of diversity besides Native Americans and European Americans, or maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But the more I thought of it, I was like, that's probably why. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Because I just have no experience, so maybe I just have a preference because I just don't.
It's the unknown.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What about you?
I actually showed that I have no preference, which I was super surprised by, because I also grew up in a very, very homogenous town,
mm-hmm.
And it was really small, and it was all white, and that was the what I was exposed to. And then I went to school at CU Boulder, which is also not diverse. So I think it's just I don't really know that many people on a close personal way who are another race. I just don't. And so I thought that would lead to me not having a preference one way or another, but I didn't. But I also think that I was trying so hard because I was like, I don't want to be racist. I don't want to be racist.
Yeah.
Get it right. So much pressure. So maybe that had something to do with it because I was aware of what the test was trying to do. I was trying to get the answer that would make me feel better about myself, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know. The tests were interesting because they are kind of stressful because everyone wants to not be racist and
not have any biases
or prejudices against any people because you also don't want to experience any prejudice yourself. So I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. That one was interesting for me. I also took some of the gender tests. Did you take any of those? Mm-hmm. Well, I thought it was interesting because the first one I took, because I didn't find one that was just gender preference for male or female, but the one that I took was gender preferences in relation to careers. So whether or not basically I believe that women could have careers outside of the home or whatever, gender equality in the workplace or something. But I expected to have like an extreme preference for females because I consider myself to be a feminist, and I had no preference at all.
Yeah,
which I thought was really interesting. But also, it was just in relation to careers, and I do think that like today, like in today's day and age, men and women do have a pretty equal shot at having like the same positions. Like not that it's totally equal, and we still have a long way to go, but there are a lot more women like VPs of companies and like CEOs than there ever has been.
Yeah.
And not that there's like an equal amount at all, because there are some fields that are predominantly like dominated by males.
Yeah. And there's fields that are dominated by women too. But those fields I feel like are usually the underpaid ones. Like
education.
Being a teacher, dominated by women and a super underpaid job, and you have to is it necessary as one cause? Like, is it underpaid because it's women, or is it underpaid because it's just an undervalued career? I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but I feel like it is partially because it's dominated by women. And I don't know, from the Johnson reading, when he's listing all the different parts of like the ways that you experience privilege as a male. I can't write it down actually. Like the systems of privilege. I read that, and then I watched the vice presidential debate. Did you watch that?
No.
Okay, so it was these two guys. It was like a table format, and it was moderated by a woman. And these guys were so incredibly rude to this woman who were moderating. She would say, like, "Excuse me, Senator, like, the governor's talking, like, please wait till your turn." And he would just talk over her. She would say, "Our time for this topic is up," and I'm like, "Here's the next question." She'd start to say the next question, and they were both just talking over her, and it was.
And you think that has to do with the fact that she was a woman? I think it was
because she was a woman, and I mean, and then even watching. Did you watch the presidential debate?
No.
Okay, because Trump was just interrupting Hillary constantly, and I was reading an article, and it was talking about how like that is a thing. It's so common in the workplace is that women are interrupted by men.
Like legitimately, their voice isn't heard.
Their voice is not heard because the men have this system of thinking that their voice is important and they're supposed to talk, and then so they just don't need to value what the woman is saying, so it's okay for them to interrupt. And it was crazy to read that reading and then watch that debate and see these two men who want to be vice president and have no ability to respect what someone else is saying.
That's so interesting.
Someone who's moderating their debate. Like, you want to hear the question she's asking, right? Because that's what you're supposed to be answering.
And I was also surprised that, like, I had no preference with this test because before I was a teacher, I worked in the business world for 10 years, and I was in leadership roles, and it was extremely difficult for me to obtain these roles and to become general manager of a restaurant.
Yeah.
And, like, it was so hard because I feel like everything was always, like, the odds were always stacked against me. Like, I had to work twice as hard as my male counterparts to get to work. Because I automatically because I was a woman, I automatically had to prove myself that I was capable. Like, they would give the same tasks to males in the same position as me and would expect less out of them and more out of me. Because I automatically just had to prove myself because I was considered less than the man. And something that always came up was my emotionality. Like, they would always talk about how, like, oh, well, how do you think you would be able to, like, when I was trying to get promoted, they would always, like, leaders above me would always ask me questions that they wouldn't ask my male counterparts. Like, they would ask me, so, if so-and-so was stealing because they needed money for their family, like, stealing from the cash register, how would you deal with that situation? I would explain how I would deal with it, and then they would say, would your inclination to empathize with them affect your decision making and how you would, reprimand this employee or whatever? And I'm like, no, like, my ability to empathize with people has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a female.
Yeah.
Like, that has nothing to do with it. But then I would ask my, like, similar people that were going for the same position that were guys, and they would say, like, oh, no, they didn't ask me that question.
Yeah.
They would, like, they wouldn't even consider it. And they would say, like, the fact that you're married and you want children, like, how are you going to be able to juggle working and home life, and they would never ask men that same question.
And that's sad because you would a man would be a part of his family too.
That's and so I'm offended as a woman, but I'm also offended for these hypothetical men in these situations too, because
it's so dumb.
It's not okay that they're just considered to be never a part of their family at all, and women are considered to be only a part of the family.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so I think that was the general trend I noticed from all the privileged identities. The privileged identities don't have to define themselves. A man doesn't have to define himself by being a man, but when you have to be defined as a woman, which comes with all this stuff, having more emotions or whatever it is, and it's just being a part of a family.
Yeah.
And it's just so nonsense that you have to define yourself by that. Because it's not the only aspect of who you are.
And then, in the second Johnson reading, chapter 7 or whatever, they were talking about, I don't remember when this literature was published, but I was curious to find that out because, I wonder if someone were to write something about, gender differences in power and dominance, speaking in terms of your gender, today, because I wonder if there would be differences, because they talk about how, in public, if men would see a group of women, having coffee or out at a restaurant, they would always assume that they're up to something, they're scheming.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so weird. I was like, why?
Yeah.
So weird.
Is that really what people think?
And that's what I wrote some notes reflecting on that, and I was thinking, I wonder if that's what men really do think when women are hanging out.
Yeah.
If women are hanging out in a group. And I wonder why. I wonder if women in the workplace are having a meeting, and it just so happens to be women. Do men think, they're up to something? They're making this, diabolical plan. I wonder if that's...
Well, okay, and then what about...
a bias that men have.
Because imagine the reverse. Imagine if we had another guy who worked at our school, instead of just Ben.
Yeah.
If Ben and this other guy were talking, would you ever think to yourself, oh, those men are up to something?
I mean, probably.
They're scheming.
I probably would.
But, they're just talking to each other.
Yeah, but, why is that?
I don't know. It's strange. I mean, I also thought it was interesting when they were talking about how, when the traits that you need to get ahead, being aggressive and confident, and, all that stuff is stuff that makes women a bitch. And
exactly.
For men, it's, a good thing. So you can't win. I mean, I think it's the same thing. I was just reading this other article about, stopping the word slut. 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 And how, that's another dichotomy that women have to always deal with is, either you're a prude, or you don't want to have sex, and you don't want to do it, what the men want from you, or you're a slut.
Yeah.
And it's women don't even have ownership of their own...
No.
You can throw them on the ground. She's being rude. Women don't even have ownership of their own sexuality. It has to be defined, their sexual identity, by men. At least when we're talking about heterosexual relationships.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. Sucks to have your identities defined for you.
Yeah.
Isn't that the general...
So I think about that, and then I go back to the African American versus European American, and I'm sure that African American people think the same thing. It sucks that my identity is defined for me.
Yeah.
I'm just born, and I had no say over the fact that I was born to be a black person in America.
Yeah.
And from birth, I have all of these predisposed, predetermined identity characteristics for me when I can't even develop my own identity.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, because as a woman, being a minority in this country, or, in this society, that I feel that way.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine, and that's not something I can change.
Yeah.
I could if I wanted to go out and get surgery and change, whatever. But there's stigma around that, too. It's then you're still not accepted.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. There was one of the readings that had that wheel.
Yeah.
That showed, the inner level and then the outer level. And the inner level was more things that you couldn't really change.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because one of the things that I thought of was... height, and how, because it was talking about people with disabilities and how this world is made for normal size,
Able
average
people,
size, just for height, like average size people that are able to like walk around.
Yeah.
And how like just if you rent a place, like your counter heights are made for like
that's how high they are.
Yeah, like they're just a certain height, and
yeah.
if you're in a wheelchair, like they're too tall for you.
Yeah.
And or like if you're a little person and you like need a step ladder to get to all of the cupboards. But I was thinking too about just like maybe I don't have a disability, but I'm what's considered average height. There's a lot of things that I can't reach that I have to get a ladder for or whatever, and I don't feel badly about that. Like that's one of the things that like I know that I can't control that, and that's just in my DNA and how I'm made up. So I'm not offended. Like sometimes a lot of my friends are really tall, Abby, and and so like not you guys, but just in the past, like people would tell me that I'm short, even though I'm like considered average height for Americans. But people would say like, "Oh, you're so short," but I've never been offended by that. Because I know that it's not something I can change. Yeah. But then at the same time, when people criticize me for being a woman, I am offended by that. Yeah. And so I wonder why. Because that's not something I can change either.
Well, because I think that it's probably because, you know, you kind of, well, no, you're not choose isn't the right word, but you have things that you consider to be more part of your identity. Yeah. You know, and you're like, your height isn't, like maybe you should consider it part of your identity. Yeah. It's just who you are. Yeah. But being a woman is part of your identity. And so that's why when someone criticizes it, it's like it's more of an issue. And I think that would be the same for, you know, like race relations or even, you know, if for being disabled, like if that's how you identify yourself, then it would be harder to deal with the fact that like the world has these expectations around you. Yeah. If that makes sense. Also, this is like not really related, but being really tall and renting apartments, there have been so many apartments, like the majority of the ones I've lived in, where the shower head is too short for me. Oh, yeah. So I have to angle it up so that it will, like, go on the top of my head. I think this is the first apartment I've lived in where it's, like,
taller.
Like, significantly taller than I am. Which
That's
is
interesting
awesome.
Because my husband and I almost moved to Chicago at the beginning of this year, and we were looking at a lot of houses out there. And that's something that we noticed is every single house that we looked at, the showers were too small for even us. Yeah. And I was like, we are both average height. So that's really strange. Yeah. Like, I wonder if it's just something specific to the demographic there. Yeah. But I was like, I would barely be able to fit under it. My husband would have to duck. Yeah. Yeah. And he's 5'9" or something. So, yeah. I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah. But, I
don't know. I think that, like how the frequency with what the identity is commented on, maybe. Yeah. You know, like, I think about, there was one black guy who went to my high school, and I feel like people were very aware of his race because he was literally the only black person in my class. Yeah. So, like, he was super aware of his race, and, like, I can't say because I'm not him. Did that make him more comfortable with it? Did it make him uncomfortable? Like, I don't know how that made him feel.
Did it alienate him? Or did he feel unique? Yeah.
And then, like, I've never worked at a place where I've been, like, oh, I did, actually. I worked at a custard stand when I was in college, and it was, like, one girl in the custard stand was connected to, like, a convenience store, which was all men, and they were, like, super rude towards me and like always talked down to me and were super condescending, and I never felt comfortable there, which is different now at this work where I'm surrounded by women. So like being a woman is not really like a strong part of me there because it's just that's normal. Everyone.
It's the normal. Yeah.
But then how does Ben feel? You know? Yeah. Being the only guy, or even like Matt when he's sitting there and doing work, like And people question like, why is there a guy sitting in the office all day? I've had so many parents ask me that.
Yeah. Or another thing that's really interesting about gender is that one of the children's parents needed a babysitter, and they told Ben they needed a babysitter.
But they didn't ask
They didn't ask Ben to babysit.
The guy who watches their child all day.
So their children's teacher is a guy, and then his other co-teacher is a woman, and they asked Ben, do you know anyone that could babysit our children for tonight? And
it's crazy.
It's so weird because, like, if you trust Ben to teach your children all day, then why can't he come into your home and babysit them just like any other teacher would? Yeah. And I think it totally does have something to do with his gender, and I wonder how he perceived that.
Yeah. Well, even just, I mean, did you see that one guy who they were interviewing, and was a guy, and they didn't hire him because I mean, maybe this is like another test. It's just like general like attractiveness. He's like kind of creepy looking. Yeah. And Danielle was like, we couldn't hire him because like I don't think the parents would feel comfortable dropping out because of the way he appeared. And like I didn't talk to him. I don't know what his actual deal was, but like just based on his appearance and the fact that he was a man, he like didn't get that job because he looked kind of like creepy.
Well, that's like in one of the Johnson readings, it talked about how like. If you're a woman on a bus late at night and there's only like a creepy guy sitting across from you, like you might retreat inward and like look around, be a lot more consciously aware of your surroundings, and then like dart off the bus really fast when it stops. Or
but like the sad situation is though is that if you're a woman by yourself and there's just a guy, like that could be a dangerous situation,
especially because physically they are. Oftentimes more strong.
And that's the narrative we've been told, especially like, growing up in our generation is we were taught always the stranger danger idea and like don't talk to strangers and like be cautious and take, it's on you to keep yourself safe. Yeah. Which is like not at all fair that the burden of protecting yourself is like on the person who would be the victim instead of on people to just not hurt each other. Yeah. But like that's the reality though, is that like we are expected to take care of ourselves, and so you retreat when you're the woman alone in a bus with a guy. Because if you don't, then like you weren't being safe, and then it's your fault for getting attacked. Yeah. Batteries. Can't. It's attacked.
Mine too. Well, what are any other tests that you took that you were surprised by?
I had a preference for all the other ones. I had a preference for straight over being gay, which I'm not surprised by because I've never really known someone who identifies as gay closely. Yeah. So I think that might just be like, and also just in my like household growing up, sexuality was like very like taboo as a topic. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just my general uncomfortableness with sexuality. Anyway, and then so that was when we were in the reading when I was talking about like people just assume that you're straight. So I think that like having to identify your sexuality would make me uncomfortable because then like I don't want to hear about it. Yeah, not that I'm uncomfortable with like what they're doing. It's just like I don't want to talk about it. But then that's a privilege. Then is that like they would have to like clarify, and then that needing to clarify. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm not explaining this very well.
So, like, it's
a privilege to have your sexuality be assumed and be assumed correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's easier.
It's easier.
And you don't have to... And, like, even if you... So, say you are gay, it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to talk about your sexuality.
Yeah, because you could just be just like me.
You could be a straight person that doesn't want to talk about their sexuality.
And I get that privilege. I don't have to talk about my sexuality because someone's going to assume that I'm straight, and they're right. I don't need to correct them.
But even
I don't need to tell them like.
But even like I know some gay people that openly identify as gay and like are in a same-sex relationship or whatever. Yeah. But still don't talk about it. Yeah. Just because it's their personal belief. It has nothing to do with the fact that, like, I'm gay and I want everyone to know that I'm gay. It's that, like, if someone were to ask them, like, oh, so do you have a husband? No, actually, I have a girlfriend. Or, I have a boyfriend. If they're a guy, I have a boyfriend. Or whatever. But, like, they don't necessarily feel like they have to walk around, like, outwardly advocating for themselves as a gay person. Yeah. And I think that that's, like, a misconception, too, about sexuality. Is that, like, straight people, it's just assumed... Like, we don't really talk about it, but gay people, like, we think, oh, that's the only thing they're going to talk about.
Yeah, well, because they have to make it part of their identity. Yeah.
But, I don't know.
I thought, and so Haley actually asked me the other day, and she was like, she asked me, she was like, is Allison, like, a lesbian? Because she said Kellen, so I thought it was a boy, and I was like, no, Kellen's a girl. Yeah. And I remember, like, when Allison first, like, said they were dating, it was, like, such a secret, and I feel like they felt uncomfortable because I think they were worried about being judged by us.
Especially, I think, in the workplace. Yeah. Because there are coworkers. Yeah.
The first 2 months that they both worked there, I had no idea that they were... Like, I was like, are they friends? Like, it seems like they talk...
And when Allison talks about... When she talks about, like... I think she's getting more comfortable now because one of our my children and my students' parents was in our class, like just nursing her baby or like picking up or something like that. And Allison was in there with us. And she said like, oh, do you have any fun plans for the weekend? And Allison said, oh, well, it's my girlfriend's birthday, so I'm going to go out with her and her family and like whatever. And she was just like totally nonchalant about it because it is. It's a normal, it's a normal occurrence in her life. And it's, and then the parent was like, oh, cool. And like, it didn't even think twice about it because they were just like, okay, like that's who you are and that's awesome. And I think that that's a huge step for our culture as Americans and just like our society.
It's not even a deal anymore. It's just being like, okay, cool.
And like, I think like what you bring up about Haley, like when Haley is Abby's co-teacher, when Haley says like, oh, is she a lesbian? Like, I didn't know. I think it's like, I think we still do that and we point out the fact like, oh, they're lesbians because it's just not as common. Yeah. And it's not something, it's not an identity you can see when you look at somebody. Right. You know? Because, like if I were to look at Allison. You're white? Like, exactly. I know that because I can see you. Allison has, like, the stereotypical, like, short hair. Yeah. But other than that, like, I wouldn't know that she's a lesbian if she didn't tell me that she was. Yeah. And same with Kellen. Like, I would have no idea that Kellen was a lesbian unless she said so. Because you can't tell. Yeah. It's just a thing. And so I think that that's a step in the right direction, hopefully, for our society to, like, not be weirded out by it, but to just maybe acknowledge it. Because I don't know, though. I don't know if people... Because when people acknowledge that I'm, like, a woman, if they just say, like... I don't know, if they're not, like, demeaning me or, like, singling me out. But if they're just acknowledging that I'm a woman, like, I'm not offended by that. I'm just like, yeah, I am. Moves on. Yeah. But, like, so I wonder if, like, Allison and Kellen as lesbians feel the same way, or like if a black person were to feel the same way, if you're just like, oh, well, you're black, so you have a different perspective than we do, so what's your perspective, or whatever. Like, I wonder if that would be, I don't know, because that's what I find myself doing, is that I can identify differences in people, but I value the differences in people. Yeah. Like, I don't always say, like, that it's a bad thing, or just be like, oh, you're a black person all the time. But like, if I'm genuinely curious about like how it was for them growing up, or what their experience is in school, or what their experience is in, you know, at their workplace or whatever, I am gonna bring up an obvious factor like their race, because I automatically understand that they have a different experience than I do. Yeah. And that's all I'm curious about. But I know that like that's not the case for everybody. Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, people choose different things to identify themselves by. You don't really know. Unless you ask. Yeah. The other one I took that I was super, like, I was not very surprised by. I was actually kind of surprised I only had a moderate preference for thin people or fat people. Like, not at all surprised by that. So you're moderately preference toward thin people. Okay. Yeah. Just not at all surprised by. Because, I mean, I think that, especially as a woman, like, weight is such a big deal. Self-image. And like, and so I think that... Security. Because of how I think of, like, my own weight, when I, like, see someone, I'm, like, projecting how I would feel if I was that weight. And so I'm like, ugh, like, no, like, I think that's why it bugs me so much, is because of the standards I keep for myself, I, like, expect everyone else to have. Yeah. Which is not fair. I think that, I didn't take that one, but I wish that I would have, because I think that especially living in Colorado, like, we have such an awareness of weight, but not just, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, like, I mean, yes, it's obviously, like, more attractive to be thin, but for me, what I care about more is, like, just being healthy. Yeah. And I think that I hope that, like, a lot of the people in Colorado, that would be their reasoning behind, like, having a preference for thin people, is just because, like, I've known people, like, family members and friends that have been overweight that have died because of that, because of heart conditions or whatever. And, like, a lot of times, like, just with my friends that are my age, they'll say, like my best friend, she said one time, she was like, oh, well, you're all into fitness and whatever, so you probably won't understand where I'm coming from when I said that I had this, and this for breakfast last weekend or something. Yeah. And I was like, and I remember that because she may have been kidding, but I was like, are you trying to, like, alienate me for caring about fitness? Like, it was just a weird feeling because I never felt like secluded from a group for wanting, like, such a positive thing.
Yeah.
That's, like, scientifically proven to be positive. It's not just, like, I want to be thin because I want to look hot or something. Yeah. Like, I want to be thin because the thinner, not, like, thin, but just, like, I want to be in my healthy, BMI or whatever so that I can have a long life. And honestly, like, working in the fast food industry for so long, I feel like I'm hyper aware of this because, like, a lot of the food, a lot of the food that we would serve is, like, had MSG and had, like, all these added chemicals and stuff that I would eat, and then I would feel like garbage for like the next 12 hours.
Because it is garbage.
Yeah, and so that's more of like the reasoning for my preference for thin people, and it's just because like I think too like I'm afraid to get close to people that are overweight because I just know that their life's going to be shorter.
Yeah,
and like I'm like I think that's really interesting because I was talking about this with my husband, and like his best friend growing up was like really obese. Like he was like over 300 pounds. Jeez. And he was like genetically, like a lot of his family members were overweight, but also like just in his lifestyle, like he wasn't very active and he ate a lot of like high calorie food.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, that just makes me think that like we are afraid to get close to those people because we don't want to lose them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that makes sense. I don't know. My entire dad's side of the family is like extremely overweight.
Yeah.
And when my dad was in his early 40s, he got like super duper heavy and had like I don't remember what it's called, but like a pre-heart attack, basically. Mm-hmm. And the doctors were like, you need to be healthier. And my dad's a crazy person, so he was like, okay, and like got a trainer and like is now in good shape. But like, I don't know, I guess it's just kind of scary also to know that like do have like this genetic predisposition to be heavy. Like you can throw him on the floor again if he's being a dick. He's really rude sometimes.
He's scratching me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Anyway, cat aside. What was I saying? I lost my train of thought.
How you're done. Yeah.
Because they're all so heavy, you know, and like the human body is designed to like hold on to
a certain number
and certain sugars. Yeah. But like the society we live in, like we don't need
that much extra.
And like our bodies are like, oh yeah, I need this just in case, you know, we don't have food for a few days, but that's not going to happen in our, you know, privileged lifestyle. I have food in my fridge. You know? I don't know. It's just it's scary that like something that we need can be abused kill you, and can be abused and.
Well, and, like, that makes me think of, too, in Chapter 2 of the Johnson readings, it says, like, people are naturally, like, afraid of the unknown or what they don't understand.
Yeah.
And, like, that I feel like that's the case for my husband because my husband is 5'9.5", and he's, like, 130 pounds. Like, I weigh more than him. Yeah. And, like, he's just always been a beanpole. Like, he's just very slender, and he has a really fast metabolism. Yeah. And will eat all this garbage and just be so thin. And for him, he, like, being friends with someone that was so obese, like, he has, like, no sympathy or empathy or whatever it is for him. Like, he's like, there's no excuse for why he's like that. Like, I just don't, I don't understand it, and it's just not possible. Because, like, for him, he could eat so much and
that is not how it
be the
works,
same
though.
weight. But, like, his friend is just a different body. And, like, for me, one of my really good friends is overweight, and like I don't like fully understand it because I'm not the same weight as her, but also like I do understand how like she has used food as coping and like different things like that, and like genetically like people in her family are just like bigger, and so she has a little bit of predisposition there, but like I can understand that, so I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not, like, afraid of them or anything.
Yeah.
But for him, he's almost like, if he sees, like, a really obese person, like, on the streets, he'll, like, stare at them. And I'm like, stop. Like, that's so rude. But he just
Did he grow up in Colorado?
Yeah. And so
that's
he just...
part of it, too, then.
Yeah. He just doesn't understand it.
Yeah. I should go visit my family in Ohio, because I got off the plane, and I was just like, this is just a different world, you know?
Yeah.
Move again. The last one I did was the young and old one, which showed that I had a preference for young people over old people. Which, again, I'm not surprised. And I wrote this in my reading, or my online post that I wrote.
Goodbye, feathers.
I wrote about this, but when I was, like, I don't have a lot of memories of my dad's dad, because he had, like, lung cancer and liver cancer. It was just, like, very sick for my life, and he died when I was 7, but all my memories of him are, like, being in a wheelchair, and him, like, having oxygen, and, like, I just, as a little kid, like, that was really scary. Like, he was really scary to me, which sucks that, like, that's how I remember my grandfather.
Yeah.
But I think because of that, like, being,
you have a
like,
preference.
old or being really sick, like, those things just make me super, super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, I know that about myself, that, like, that's not something that I'm comfortable being around, because I think that I just had, like, this kind of traumatizing experience of my grandfather being scary.
Yeah.
I was a little kid. But yeah. So I don't know, I wasn't surprised by that one. Also, just, you didn't take that one, did you?
No.
There's something about the way that they took those pictures, like, you know, like, really close up.
Yeah.
And, like, the really close-up, like, you just looking at the pictures, I was like, oh, really old people, like, ugh.
Yeah.
they were creeping me out a little bit. Yeah. I think all the pictures they took for that test were kind of not great pictures.
Yeah, the ones for the race one, definitely.
Yeah.
I felt that way.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I wrote down that I was interested in from the readings was that children seem to love the unknown, which I thought was cool, because I think that, like, any of these biases that we have as adults are all created from, like, what the adults in our life have projected onto us.
Yeah.
And, like, because it was talking about how, like, toddlers are, like, so obsessed with things that they don't know. And, like, if they go and they explore something new, then they spend, like, however much time is allotted for them to spend exploring this new material or this new space or this new person. And they don't come to it with biases because they're new to the world. You know, like, they haven't been hardened by any of the, you know, societal norms or expectations. And I think that's really cool. And that I wish that...
When do we lose that? Like, when does that go away?
Like, I was thinking about that, too. Like, when does that go away? Like, and is that only because of the other people? Or is it something that's innate?
Yeah, like, is it something that we learn about the world that makes us scared of what we don't know? Yeah. Just, like, generally as you get older, and maybe it's just as you get older and you kind of become more aware of the world. Because if you think about it, like, what is the world to a child, you know? Yeah. It's their parents, it's their school, it's smaller, and you can say to the child, like, here's the globe, like, this is the whole world, you're here. But, like, conceptualizing the world as being so big is kind of hard. Yeah. You know, when you say there's France over there, and, like, well, I've never been to France, so I don't know that, you know? Yeah. So maybe it's just that kind of, like, a general awareness if you realize that the world is so big, and you realize that there's so many people and so many cultures, and there are so many more unknowns when, like, the unknowns are almost, like, just smaller when you're a kid. Yeah. I don't know, though. It's a bummer.
Well, I also think about, like, as a teacher of super young children, like, how can we try to, like, level the playing field with all, like, so we take this class and we learn about our biases, and then, so now we're, like, hyper aware of them. So how do we move forward? Like, we act in the complete opposite. So, like, if we know that we have like a preference towards like I have a moderate preference towards white people over black people, then do I act in the complete opposite and just like act like white people are just like whatever, and I like am so in love with black people, or like, you know what I mean? Like that's where my mind goes. I'm like, I need to like overcompensate in this other arena so that I can prove that I do want, even though I have these personal biases, I don't want them to stay there forever.
I mean, I think it's just like you get to know the individual, right? Like you're like, okay, I have a preference for white people over black people, but no matter who's coming into my classroom, I'm going to ask the questions and find out who they are as an individual person, separate from their identities.
Yeah.
You know? And then, you know, get to know their family and their family culture, and maybe not ascribing it to like, oh, their family culture is this way because they're from Mexico, or their family culture is this way because they're black, or this, even their family culture is this way because, you know, they have gay parents, or whatever it is. Just getting to know their individual family and not making them be defined by their identities.
Yeah.
Because that's really it, right?
Falls off the chair.
Because that's really what this thing is that, you know, having it's a privilege to not be defined by your identity, so not letting their identities define them and letting them define their own identities, then I feel like that is, maybe that's like a good step.
Yeah.
And not to ignore their identities, but to find out what that means to them and then giving it that level of value, you know?
Yeah, and like when I was talking about earlier, like how I don't think it's wrong to just acknowledge a difference in someone.
Yeah.
To just be like, oh, you're black. Cool. Yeah. Because I think that like just getting it out into the open, like hopefully then people won't feel like they need to talk about that person's quality, differentiating quality behind their back. I don't know. Yeah. But also like when I think about honoring all of the different cultures and like elements of diversity and differences in like the families present in my class, like I want to highlight all of the different like ethnicities and cultures, and I want to talk about them with my students. And so like when we put family pictures up, like we have an Asian student in our class, and I teach infants, so they don't ask questions about it. Yeah. But I want them to treat MJ the same that they treat all of their other friends. Yeah. And they do, because they're infants, so they don't know anything different. Like a friend is a friend, and that friend doesn't, you know, beat on them with toys or anything, so they want to play with him. Yeah. You know, it has nothing to do with what he looks like.
If you said to that word to them, and you said, oh yeah, guys, like, you know, MJ's Asian, like that word doesn't have any context to them.
Exactly.
Like, he's just a person to them.
But that's what's so cool, is that I think it is so cool that the reading said that, like, children seem to love the unknown, and that we really do need to capitalize on that as teachers. Yeah. And just, like, cherish those moments and, like, praise them in the moments when they are honoring each other's differences. Yeah. And, like, because once they start to hit preschool age and they start to notice those differences and they say, like, oh, you're a girl, but I'm a boy. Yeah. And, like, but we can still be friends. And then they play together. And I think that's so cool. And it has such an impact on, like, the classroom culture. I just hope that, like, I don't know, I would be really curious to see, like, for how long that stays. Yeah. The attitude or the thinking of children, like, through elementary school, or is it somewhere in elementary school that stops to be, like, it starts to be, like, more of, like, an isolating, I don't know, an isolating thing instead of, like, a unifying thing.
Yeah. I don't know, it's kind of a bummer that, I don't know, I guess compare, like, the makeup of our classrooms to, like, the makeup of the classrooms I worked at the CU Children's Center, and, like, those kids were surrounded by so many cultures every day, and so many languages, and just so much just difference, whereas, like, the kids at our school, there's not a lot of diversity, so they're just not around it, and so when they do become afraid of the unknown, part of that unknown will be people of another race, or people who are not abled, and you know, I don't know, so what do we do? You know, like how do you bring diversity to a classroom when, like, it's just not part of your classroom, just not diverse? Yeah. Like, what do we do?
Yeah. I don't know. That's kind of like talking about like the children noticing a homeless person.
Yeah.
And then like that's like pretty much the extent of diversity that they're experiencing living in Denver. I mean, there are people of different races and ethnicities, but I would presume that there's more homeless people than there are like people of different racial or ethnic backgrounds. And that's like an opportunity, I guess, to teach them.
Yeah, I'd love to do some kind of like homeless outreach thing, just so they can realize that like this person looks different, but they're still a person.
Yeah.
I mean, that's also, another way that our school is not diverse is it's like socioeconomics class.
Yeah, it's all middle to upper class.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a huge privilege.
Yeah.
Right there. These kids have advantage from like the very beginning. Just like they're actually just monetarily privileged.
Yeah, and that's evident in the places that they go to for dining and like what they do for entertainment and where they spend their time on the weekends and you know the type of clothing that they have and like literally everything.
Little baby Patagonia.
Yeah, like all of these like name brand clothing items and like foods, like all organic foods and like which are more expensive. And so you know that's a privilege.
And then that's privileging them because they're staying healthier, so they're going to be thinner and in shape. I mean, how many of our parents come in and like are going to go work out? You know, I have so many of my moms who are in yoga pants and like I'm going to go to the gym now. Like that's privilege too. They're being taught the values of being healthy and of being fit. So
and then like Jasmine was talking about
towards them in that way.
Yeah, and then like how Jasmine was talking about in class, like one privilege that we don't ever think about or talk about is like attractiveness.
Yeah.
And like that comes with so many other privileges. Like if you are wealthy, like even like if you're considered to be an uglier person or not as an attractive person, you can like buy things to make yourself look what society thinks is attractive.
And a yoga class, you know?
Yeah, you can buy all the makeup you want or like certain clothing to make yourself look a certain way.
Spa.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I think that's another thing that like it's not necessary. It's not these children at our school. It's not their fault that they are born into these families and that they have the opportunity to come to an awesome school like this, but also like it is their fault if they don't have any understanding or knowledge of other people that are different from them. And not as a child. It's not necessarily their fault as a child, but if they continue that level of like misunderstanding through their adult life, then I would say that is at the fault of them. And
do we teach them that they're privileged? Is that something that it's our job to teach them, do you think?
I don't know. I think that's cool to think about.
That's an interesting idea.
I wonder if it's personal based on like parental preference.
Yeah.
Because like what if their parents have some sort of stigma about that? Like if they have family money and they don't want their kids to think that they are privileged in that sense. Or if they end up giving a lot of money to charity so that they actually only live on like not their full income, or you know what I mean? I don't know. I wonder.
But they're still privileged, though. Like,
absolutely.
Should they know that? Like, how would you even explain that to a child?
Yeah.
Without it, I feel like this the way you explain to a child is like some people don't have it as good as you, but then does that just create like a sense of like them just pity,
and like a sense of entitlement,
or a sense of just being better than. You know, like, I don't know. And then, you know, we watched that video of that kid who's, 13.
Yeah.
But, like, you look at that and you're like, wow, that's a really aware 13-year-old. Like, most 13-year-olds aren't that aware, just in general. I don't know.
That's really interesting to think about. Like, do we teach... First of all, is it our place to teach children their privilege?
I think it's important for them to know. I don't know how you would.
Yeah, like, how would you actually go about teaching them?
Yeah. I don't know.
But also, like, does it really matter how we teach them? Like, who does it matter to? Because, like, for me, I'm such a realist. I'm just like, okay, you're rich. Like, that's a privilege.
Yeah.
Like, you need to know that not everyone that's in your life will come from a family that makes $200,000 a year or more. You know, and, like, that's...
Your preschool teachers don't make $200,000 a year.
Yeah, and, like, for me, it's not, like, a sensitive thing. Like, when people ask how much money we make or something, I'm like, I'm not offended by the fact that I don't make that much money.
No.
Like, it's my choice to work in the field that I work in.
Yeah.
And I have so much more debt than most people I know, and I still choose to work in this field because this is where I'm passionate.
Yeah.
Or this is, like, where my passions lie. But, like, that doesn't mean anything to me, so I wonder if that's, again, my personal biases just coming in, saying, like, I have no problem identifying differences with other people and pointing out differences and pointing out privileges because it just is.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's your reality. That's not your friend's reality. That's not my reality.
Yeah.
But it's yours. And so we can acknowledge it, and then you can do whatever you want with it. I don't know. So to me, I don't think it would be weird, but then it makes me think about how parents would perceive us teaching privilege to their children.
Well, then it's a question of the parents see themselves as privileged.
Yeah, because, like, would our parents be willing to, the parents of children in our school be willing to go through the similar things that we're going through, discovering our own personal biases?
And we don't know their story. Like, I mean, I'm just thinking about, like, my dad. I told him he was privileged because he's a white male.
Yeah.
Like, and he was so offended by that because he's like, I work for everything that I've got and, like, all this stuff. And I'm like, well, but it was a privilege that you know, were a white male, so you went to an all-boys high school and you were on the football team and you got a football scholarship to school. Like, I could never have done that because I can't play football.
Yeah.
Like, that is being a white male was a privilege for you in that situation.
Yes.
Being physically able was a privilege for you in that situation.
Yes.
He never gets that. So I wonder if maybe our parents, or, like, the parents at our school, I mean, would have, like, a similar narrative where they're like, well, I worked really hard. Like, I worked to pay for my college. And, and I worked for all this. And I, like River's dad, like, he started his own company.
And, like, absolutely you worked for that.
And you worked for that, but that's not but you're still privileged.
Because why did you work for that? Because your parents, that was the example that their parents showed them.
Yeah.
Was that you work hard for what you do. So that's a privilege.
Yeah.
To have parents that are that hyper-aware and are that, you know...
teaching that value.
Yeah, that able to teach their children the same values. I don't know. So, yeah.
It'd be interesting to ask the parents, like, if they see themselves as privileged, and do they see their children as privileged? Yeah.
And then, in addition to that, where do they go from there?
Yeah.
Like, what do they do with that information?
I don't know. That's what we're asking ourselves right now.
I know. So, like, I'd
be
interested to know what they think about it. Like,
yeah.
Because I think that's a huge part of the Reggio Emilia teaching philosophy too, is, you know, having the parent as involved as the teachers are, and like having that relationship with all parties. And so I think it'd be cool if we had parents that were receptive to exploring that with us.
Yeah. That would be cool.
Yeah.
It'd be a good community project.
Yeah, for sure. Makes me think that's something that we could definitely do as school-wide, because it's a reality present in all of the classrooms, not just like one or two.
Yeah, and it's not something we think about every day. You know, we just go to school, go to work, do our stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the tuition for an infant to come to our school is $420 a week. So, like, full-time. So that's
crazy. That's
$1,700 a month. I mean, like, that's more than my mortgage.
Yeah.
So...
so much money.
Yeah, so I just think, like, if you're able to afford 2 house payments, and that's only if you have one child, like, you're incredibly privileged.
Yeah.
But also, like, that starts so many conversations, because that's not, for me, like that makes me feel very frustrated with our education system, especially for early childhood education, because, I mean, private tuition schools for early childhood education are just outrageously expensive. And it's not fair that, like, other children that come from families that are, you know, below the poverty line or just near the poverty line or whatever can't afford to go to school.
Yeah.
Like, why is that? That's an issue that's present in our society as a whole. That's our culture and society saying that you don't deserve to go to school before kindergarten unless you make a certain amount of money.
Yeah. It's just wrong. It's just wrong.
Just wrong.
All right.
Well, good thoughts.
Yeah, good talk.
Good talk.
Okay. I'm going to turn it off now.
Goodbye.